All right, so at the pan dropped, all of the ATF out, shifter is disconnected, we've got the exhaust out, drive shaft out. Those are sitting over here now. Just make sure that you tape up your U-joints even if you don't plan on using them again. There's the exhaust as well. So now I'm just gonna disconnect this guy, which is your speedometer cable. So I'm gonna yank that off with that bracket that holds that whole drive assembly in there. Now that the ATF is drained, there shouldn't be much coming out of there when I drop that. And then I am going to spin the engine over and remove the torque converter bolts. To do that, just turn the motor over by hand. Each bolt will come to where it's accessible by the oil filter there. So just turn the motor over so you get all those bolts disconnected. Okay, so after popping all those bolts out, so quick note, you'll know you've got all the bolts. That torque converter spins. Your flex plate stays still. Obviously you're fully disconnected, so you can see a gap there. You should be able to push this torque converter back and that's free and ready to go. So that's ready to rock. Okay, torque converter is all unbolted, so next I'm just gonna remove this starter, which is pretty simple. Just the two main bolts holding it over your ring gear there. And then two electrical connections on the solenoid. You can see those. It's two little guys right there. So your main power wire just goes directly up to the battery. So you should go ahead and remove that just because your battery's already disconnected. So you can remove both those electrical terminals off of that starter, and then just the two main bolts right there, and that should come down. Okay, a couple last things to do under here. Just gonna make sure that that fill tube is released. I can see it zip tied up there. Just gotta get that free and potentially remove it, but we'll just see how we're fastened up top. And then also these transmission cooler lines. I'm probably not going to be too gentle on those because obviously this is going to a standard and that side of the radiator is no longer going to be used. So there's no need to keep those lines. So disconnect those from the rad, disconnect those from the transmission, and then that fill tube is next, and then we can go up top, make sure everything's good to go up there before we start attaching it to the jack and dropping it down. Everything's marked where everything came out. So drop those cooling lines and filler neck, starters out. So get those dropped and carry on. So just drop the car down here just to remove the last of the cooler lines. So those are disconnected and draining. So I've got to just remove that is the filler neck for the automatic transmission. So a couple screws under there that I've got to remove, get rid of that. Very close to the firewall with the distributor cap there. So I'm gonna yank that off just because this motor will tilt back a little bit when I remove that transmission and tilt it back, so just don't want to crunch that. I'm gonna raise this thing up, make sure we're all disconnected on the filler lines, or sorry, cooler lines, filler neck, make sure that's all disconnected. And then we'll do another final check up top here, and then we'll get to removing the bell housing bolts and cross member. Okay, so Speedo's disconnected, which was right there. Pop the cable off. So this is the TV cable, or the kick down cable that attaches to the carburetor, in this case fuel injection. So that is disconnected. That's set up off there. So I was able to get to the Bell housing bolts, I already removed that one. That one's loose. Up top, I don't know if you can see it way up in there. I got that top one out with the swivel extension. And then same thing on this side. The upper one won't quite release against the body there, just until I remove the cross member, but up top is removed. I don't know if you can see that way up in there. So that cable is disconnected, bell housing's loose, torque converter is disconnected, filler neck has since been removed. You can see up in there the cooler lines are taken out, and then down below it, that was where the filler neck was in there. It was all siliconed in. So that's all disconnected. Then I've got my transmission jack hooked up, and a lot of guys use chains. I just like to use ratchet straps, so I've got a strap, just easier to feed around the body of the transmission. So that's up around the transmission and strapped around that jack, and it's all set. So the next step now is just remove those final bell housing bolts, and then just that cross member pops out, and after that, that whole assembly will pop down. Decent first day, everything organized, got the red solo cup method going there for all the parts. Starter, pulled the distributor cap off, the air filter assembly, the drive shaft, and the exhaust. That's everything going in.